So, Drive to Survive Season 5. I have a few thoughts. I want to give my review of it. Overall, it was good. You know, it wasn't as bad as last season, but it still wasn't as good as the first two seasons were, I feel. But I'm gonna get into my review now. Get into more of my review than just a brief mention of it was good. I mean, I did like some things though, and I'll start with the things I did like. Gunther Steiner is still the main character, but Yuki Tsunoda is continuing to make his case on coming for that crown, because once again, he was fantastic. I like that Daniel's horse from Kota made an appearance, and I will say, I overall really enjoyed the first two episodes, actually. I did not expect the Binotto Steiner road trip in the first episode, but it was brilliant, and speaking of Binotto, in his interview bits to camera, he refuses to speak in English. And that team principal argument in episode 2 is, for me, one of the best bits of all of Drive to Survive. The Piastri drama is brilliant, and I like in the last episode they included Charles being a bit lost in the post-donut smoke looking for the P2 board. But things I like aside, there are general things that are like still there and are always there that still just continue to annoy me. Drivers and engineers talking during fast laps and qualifying, which they would never do that. Creating fake commentary, misplacing real commentary, like in episode 8 when they were showing the Japanese Grand Prix and they shoot Sainz spinning, going off bed, Crofty reacting like, oh no, and Carlos Sainz is spun round. However, Crofty did not say that. We didn't see the incident happen live. It was showing cameras in one of the shots you can see the Ferrari, and Jensen was just like, oh, the Ferrari off. And then it cut to it and it was Sainz. Then we saw the replay. So Crofty didn't say, oh no, and Carlos Sainz is spun round, not at least at that race. He probably said it at some point. I don't know when Crofty said that, to be honest. Then later in that same episode, he had Crofty reacting to Tsunoda overtaking Albon and Colt on like one of the last laps. And that was absolutely brilliant. You know, they're reacting like that to the move, but Crofty didn't say that to the move. We actually never saw that move live or on a replay, so we can't react to something they didn't freaking see. They also just don't mention some things as well, like the red flag for the weather delay in Monaco, that was never mentioned. The red flag for Schumacher's crash was, but the weather delay red flag wasn't mentioned. And the tractor incident and red flag in Japan wasn't mentioned either. And I know the tractor, chances are the FIA wouldn't want them to mention that. However, I am quite surprised that Netflix, the drama kings that they are sometimes, didn't bring it up, or didn't try to go after bringing that one up, because that was one of the more dramatic points of the 2022 season. And then there's just other small things, like in episode 5 when they show Ocon going in for his pit stop during the French Grand Prix, then there's one like 1 or 2 second clip where you can see him pulling into the pit box with aero rakes on the car. So they've clearly taken like a 1 or 2 second clip from practice and put it in there and thinking, ah, no one will notice. But I noticed. And they also show him serving 5-second penalty as like 7 or 8 seconds long. So, I mean, it's not as bad as Hamilton's 30-second long 10-second stop goal last season, but I'm just saying. Little things aside, on to the more kind of bigger things, I feel like some tracks hardly got mentioned and others were mentioned way too many times. Like, I get why they do that, I get why they don't mention some tracks and have to go back to other tracks multiple times. It's for storylines, you know, sometimes there's multiple storylines at one Grand Prix, or for a Grand Prix there's like, no, it doesn't really fit in with a storyline, so they don't really mention it. I get it, but I still feel like some of the tracks, some of them just were hardly mentioned at all. It was a little bit of a shame, you know? Spa, both races in Italy, Austria, Australia, and Brazil were all hardly mentioned. Brazil especially, that should have been mentioned more, because that race was freaking mad. And on Austria, the first little rant of this video, Charles Leclerc's win in Austria, never mentioned. Not once is that mentioned. The thing they chose to show from Ferrari's weekend in Austria was Carlos Sainz's DNF. And this was at the beginning of the start of episode 10. And this were, like, Netflix did not need to go there in episode 10 with Ferrari. Like, I know the mistakes Ferrari made was a big part of their storyline this season in Drive to Survive. However, I feel like in episode 10, by that point in time, with the Ferrari mistake storyline, they're just beating a dead horse, to be honest. And yes, I know I just said beating a dead horse in reaction to when we're saying something that's in relation to Ferrari, who are known as the prancing horse. But like, Ferrari made mistakes. we get it. But as I just said, at that point in time, you're beating a dead horse. Why not at that point? Why not choose to display some of the good that happened for Ferrari this season in 2022? Because aside from episode 1, they don't really mention much more of the good. Like episode 1 with Bahrain, and then the beginning of episode 3 with a quick mention of Charles's win in Australia, and maybe Sainz's win in Silverstone, depending on your view of the whole Ferrari-Silverstone mess. Like, aside from, like, that, then there's no good mentioned. You know, even with Sainz's win, the majority of the mentioning there is, you know, more, oh, they fucked up the strategy, which to be fair, they did. In that, I swear to God, in that Silverstone race, when they were showing it in episode 3, the Christian Horner proved himself a better Ferrari strategist than the Ferrari strategists were that day. I'm sorry, Ferrari, I had to say it. But they didn't really show any more good of Ferrari's season, and there was some good. How about showing, they didn't show Charles's P12 to P3 comeback drive in Austin. They didn't show his comeback drive to P4 in Brazil, where he'd come back to P4 from being in the wall and last early on. They didn't show his aforementioned win in Austria. They could have at least mentioned some of the good that did happen the rest of the season for Ferrari, but they didn't. I'll come back to Ferrari in a bit. I have a bit more to rant on there. But while some tracks were hardly mentioned, back to this, others were mentioned too much, as I said. Monaco and Silverstone were both mentioned like 3 times each, which, I get it, storylines, but it's a bit too much, to be brutally honest with you on that one. And Silverstone was 3 episodes in a row, and it was in-depth each time from 3 different perspectives. And a bit of a nitpick for me, but not once did they show Charles's overtake on a Hamilton at Copse that had Alex Jakes and David Coulthard losing their minds in the Channel 4 commentary box.
Can he stay ahead of the Ferrari as they sweep into Copse corner? That's committed! Oh, no way! Whoa. No way! Has Charles Leclerc done that? That is absolutely incredible stuff.
However, my biggest problem with Silverstone comes in episode 4, when they're showing the Verstappen-Schumacher battle. Let me just walk you through how it unfolded, because I swear to bloody God, it looks like they looked at how they portrayed George Russell's Spa Q3 lap from last season and just went, hold my beer. So they had a starting last lap radio playing to Max on the main straight, and it was in the Halo, kind of the Halo pillar cam. But then they go on board with Mick on the T-cam, and they have that same message playing to him starting last lap, but he's going into Copse. So where the hell is the start line? Is it the main straight or is it the old main straight? Make up your minds, Netflix. And then it goes into the Halo cam on Mick's car, and you can see he's at turn 1 now, not Copse. He's at Abbey, not Copse. So, okay, we're transporting. And then it goes back to off-board, and then it shows them going through and exiting Chapel. Then they're all of a sudden exiting Stowe, but then they're all of a sudden jumping back to the exit of Chapel again, followed by them either on the Wellington Straight or the Hangar Straight. I haven't quite figured out which one it is. If anybody has an idea, then let me know down below, because I can't figure it out which one it is. But after that, then they're going into the Vale Chicane, and then, or with Mick having a go, then it's showing them ahead, jumping ahead to Village and the Loop. The Loop, that's turns 3 and 4, and then it's back on the Halo cam for the next shot, but you can see with the movements of the steering wheel that it's Maggots and Beckett's and Chapel that they're at again. Then it shows them back at Stowe for like the 2nd or 3rd time, then they're backtracking to Woodcut, then they're backtracking further to the Wellington Straight and heading into Brooklands, in the midst of all this showing the Haas garage for whatever fucking reason. Then they're at Luffield going through there, and suddenly Luffield turns in to the exit of the club, the final corner, and they cross the line. And all of this is the last lap according to Netflix. Like, just what the fuck was that ordering on the last lap? Like, I'm not an artist, so I'm not gonna try, but any artists out there, if you could draw out a map of how Netflix portrayed the layout of Silverstone as, that would be brilliant. Like, draw a map of the Silverstone circuit as portrayed by Netflix from the last lap battle between Verstappen and Schumacher, and honestly, freaking send it my way on Twitter. I would love to see it. My Twitter is linked below, by the way. And now I feel like that Silverstone out of orderliness is a perfect lead-in to my next point, which leads me into my next rant, and that is on over-exaggeration or just not showing things unfolding in the race the way they did. And this brings me back to Ferrari and episode 3, because okay, episode 3, not the easiest episodes for Ferrari fans to watch, and personally it's not an episode I'm gonna go back and watch anytime soon. However, for fuck's sake, Netflix, do not go making it seem like Ferrari had a strategy blunder in a race where they had no strategy blunder. When they covered Canada in this episode, they shoot as another bad strategy from Ferrari when neither car pitted under the VSC. And if you recall back to Canada, the VSC came out on like lap 9 or lap 10. Leclerc had started the race at the back with engine penalties, and he started on the hard tire, so pitting that early, that would have just been stupid. And then for Carlos Sainz, then it was a case of do the opposite of Verstappen. And you can see when the VSC there, you could see the Ferrari mechanics were standing by in the pit lane ready for a stop. But then Verstappen came in and boxed, so Sainz stayed out, which I think was a smart thing to do because he wasn't going to get ahead of Verstappen by doing the exact same thing as him. And if you recall, then Sainz benefited hugely when a full safety car came out later on, allowing him to pit for fresher tires than Verstappen was on, and he was right there at the restart and right there challenging Verstappen for the win. He didn't take the win, it was Verstappen winning, but that's besides my point entirely. Then if we skip ahead to episode 10, there was not one single mention of the battle for P2 in the Drivers' Championship. Not one mention of Charles versus Checo. It was all about Mercedes versus Ferrari, and they make it seem like Hamilton was the car in P3 behind Leclerc chasing him in the late stages. They make it seem like Hamilton was the one chasing him down. It wasn't! Everyone who watched that race knows that damn well that it was Checo chasing Charles down after Ferrari kind of forced Checo into going for that extra stop, and then Leclerc stayed out, went longer, and went to the end, and it actually worked out perfectly fine. It was actually a really good strategy for Ferrari. Like, I mean, come on, the Leclerc-Perez thing in Abu Dhabi, that was really good. Why didn't they show it? And just another small one here, but in episode 9, they didn't show the full kind of play out of the Leclerc-Verstappen battle. They just showed the final one move that got Verstappen ahead of Leclerc. They didn't show Verstappen's first attempt at a move, where he got ahead, but then Charles came back and got back ahead, and Verstappen had to, you know, sit back and then go again, and then that was the move that, you know, made it stick. They kind of made it look like a one attempt and done kind of overtake, and not the full context of the battle that was really good between them. But just, for fuck's sake, Netflix, show the goddamn races as they actually happened, not in the way that fits whatever bullshit storyline you're trying to spin this time. Like, the over-exaggeration is not as bad this season, but it's still a problem. Then we have Seb's retirement, which is hardly mentioned at all. In all of the silly season drama that happened and they mentioned, which as I said, was brilliant, Seb's retirement is hardly mentioned. It's brought up once in episode 5 during that whole madness, and that was it. In the final episode, all the focus was on Ricciardo and him not being on the grid in 2023. They even showed a freaking montage of Ricciardo, which we did not need. He's not on the grid this year, sure, but he's still around. He's in with Red Bull now. Unlike Sebastian Vettel, who is probably right about now sitting at home, just kind of just going, oh, cock. You know, kind of like James May in freaking old Top Gear or the Grand Tour or whatever, when he's just like, oh, cock. Just like him. And that would be Seb, seeing Aston Martin seemingly having pace now, being good after he's left the team. But they could have used the time they spent on the Ricciardo montage for giving Seb a proper send-off, but they didn't. But what's your thoughts on Drive to Survive Season 5? Did you like it? Did you hate it? And did I miss anything? I probably did miss something. And I'm gonna be honest, this video turned out quite a bit more ranty than I expected it would. But look, overall, despite all the ranting I did, this season, it's good. That doesn't mean it's great or that I especially like it. There is episodes I do like, you know, like I said, the first 2 episodes I really enjoyed them, but there's still quite a few things in Drive to Survive that in this season that I just didn't really like too much, or that just kind of, I noticed that just weren't quite right or whatever. I don't know, what's your thoughts on Drive to Survive Season 5? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Drop a like if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new to keep up to date with all my Formula 1 content, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.